Hi, my name is Reddy Causes Ruckus. I'm a social worker and I work directly with the churches a lot of the time, or at least I would if
Do you work with churches or not? Because it sounds like you don't actually work with the churches with the way you said that right there.
or at least I would if they would feed non-members.
A lot of churches operate food banks and soup kitchens, and they are outside of the church building, and those are open to anybody. You don't have to be a member of their church to have access to that right there.
Got a lot of great points, except for the fact that it's totally ignoring how samples and statistics work.
Now I get to have some fun. Statistics. Whenever you sample statistics, you need to have what's called a representative sample. When it comes to church distribution in the United States of America, we're not going to worry about globally. About 80% of your churches are small churches. 20% are considered mid-sized, and less than 1%, with it being as low as less than 0.1% of churches are mega churches. In a properly designed experiment, if you're looking at just Christian churches, about 80% of your sample points should be small churches. About 20% of your sample points need to be mid-sized churches, with less than 1% being your mega churches. Also, you need a large enough representative sample as well. There's well over 100,000 churches in the United States of America. So you need to sample probably around 500 churches just to get a low enough error to be able to say this is representative. Because mind you, any statistics they're representative, they're not exact. The only way to get exact is a 100% sample of everything. But since you can't do that, and statistics are made to get a representative sample, you need to have enough samples of the total population in order to collect a sample that is representative with a small enough margin of error to consider it, hey, this means something, or this sort of reflects the truth. So she probably needed to sample about 500 churches in order to get meaningful data. She sampled 42 churches. That's it, just 42. And out of that 42, 30 some odd were mega churches. That is a sampling rate of over 71% when mega churches represent less than 1% of the church population. So extreme sampling bias on mega churches. And most mega churches, not all, but most, adhere to prosperity gospel. Prosperity gospel does not exist to serve the poor, the needy, or to even serve Christ. Prosperity gospel churches exist to make the pastor and the leaders of that church rich. That's what they're there for. Although they wear the Christian label, they're not actually Christian. And no, do not pull the no true Scotsman fallacy on that one, because that's BS. That's the same as taking a turd, putting it in a Snickers bar wrapper, and then saying, oh, it's an actual Snickers bar because it claims to be a Snickers bar. No, you can't. They're called wolves in sheep's clothing for a reason. They're not actually Christian. They just wear the label. But anyhow, regardless, back to the statistics. If she were doing it, she would need a sample size of about 500 churches. And out of that 500 churches, she would need to sample like 400 small churches. She would need to sample about 100 mid-sized churches, and then throw in 2 or 3 mega churches in order to get a good representative sample. And it's not just that. There's even more to it than that. She'd have to lay out the geography and randomly select the churches from the geography of the country, and not just go, oh, I'm just going to call this big cluster of churches over in this corner of the country, because that would fail to produce a representative sample of Christianity in the USA as well. So again, since you think her statistics were fine, then I would suggest that you go to the school that you got your social worker's degree from and get your money back, because if that's the statistics they taught you, that your social worker's degree is useless. Go get your money back, go to a school that teaches proper statistical analysis, and then go learn there. But other than that, yeah, her statistics was trash.
Obviously, megachurches are the best churches to call because they are the ones with the most members, who have the most influence, who more people get their idea of Christianity from than any other type of church.
Well, let me ask you this. Cartels have a lot of money and a lot of resources. Should the needy go to cartels and beg them for help? Well, when it comes to megachurches, like I said, most of them, again, not all, but most of them adhere to prosperity gospel. and a prosperity gospel pastor and his money are not easily separated.
On top of that, you don't actually provide any evidence that the person in question called non-Christian churches. When I reviewed the video, all of the churches are in fact Christian, because the one qualifier for being Christian is accepting Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior. So if that is part of a church's doctrine, they are Christian.
So Muslims and Buddhists are Christians now? Because if you actually were paying attention, she called one mosque, which is Muslim, not Christian, and she called one Buddhist temple, which is Buddhist, not Christian. So, and as far as if you accept Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior, you're a Christian, that's not actually true. For example, followers of Serapis, which they don't really exist anymore, but there's some people trying to resurrect the idea in these days. Serapis Christos. If you were a follower of Serapis Christos, you were called a bishop of Christ or a Christian. So anyone who follows a Christ can be considered a Christian. Doesn't have to be the Jesus Christ of the Gospels. So anyone who follows a Christ can be called a Christian. But we're not talking about all Christians regardless of which Christ they follow. We're talking about the ones that follow the Jesus of the Gospels. Those are the Christians under question here. So no, accepting Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior still doesn't qualify you as being a Christian, because there are people that accept a different Jesus as Lord and Savior. They follow a different Jesus who has different principles, different characteristics, is not the Jesus of the gospel, and therefore they are not what is supposed to be the Christians under consideration here, because they follow a different Jesus, a Jesus that they created under a different light that is entirely different. For example, there's a group out there that follows space Jesus. They say Jesus it basically is an alien that comes from another planet. And yeah, they follow Jesus as Lord and Savior, but their Jesus is a space alien. They would not count as following the Jesus of the Gospels, now would they?
Thirdly, I'd like to note that no! Those regulations don't fucking exist. Those are church policies. When you become a church in the United States of America, you become a charity. And as long as you have proper licensing, which is literally just a $20 to $40 food handler's permit, you can in fact give food to the needy.
Really? Well, let's take a look at some of these cases right here coming up.
Megachurches on average spend more of their income paying their upper church leadership than actually participating in any charity work. Same with the LDS Church, and it often, with the LDS Church specifically, funnels a lot of its donated money into profit-making businesses attached to the church, which many megachurches also do.
Wait a minute there, you're now supporting what I'm saying about the megachurches. Oh my goodness.
Back to why the sample size doesn't actually suck is because if you call individual local churches that don't exist in large networks, not only are they far less capable of actually helping the hungry and needy because it's one church versus an entire network of churches, but it's also not accurate to the larger population of Christians.
She's sort of supporting what I'm saying again right there in that, except at the very end there. We're studying churches, not Christians. So we're not looking at people, we're looking at institutions. So if you want to get a statistical analysis of Christians, then you need to do an entirely different type of sample rather than calling up institutions. So again, you don't understand statistics, and her statistical methods were absolutely horrible, probably because she doesn't know how to do statistics herself.